I am Ravi Visvesvaraya Sharada Prasad, the noted legal luminary Fali Sam Nariman, who turned 94. He gave a fascinating interview to Barkha Dutt for her Mojo video news channel. And Mr. Fali Nariman spoke at length about the emergency declared by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi on 26th June 1975 when he resigned as additional Solicitor General in protest. A few months ago, Mr. Nariman and I were discussing former Prime Minister H.D. Deve Gowda, and Mr. Nariman was releasing a biography of H.D. Deve Gowda, which was written by the noted political analyst and editor Sugata Srinivasa Raju, who is a protege of my father, HY Sharada Prasad. And in his speech while launching Sugata Srinivasa Raju's book, Mr. Fali Nariman stated that H.D. Deve Gowda had a sound, practical understanding of legal issues, even though he did not have any legal training at all. And then Mr. Nariman then added that my father, H.Y. Sharada Prasad, had remarked to him that if Indira Gandhi had a better understanding of constitutional laws, then she would not have imposed the emergency. And this was in spite of constitutional laws and constitutional history being among the subjects which she had studied at Oxford. Um, the legal advice about imposing the emergency was provided by Siddhartha Shankar Ray, with some inputs from H.R. Gokhale, Devakanta Barua, and Rajni Patel. And to give their background for readers who are not familiar with them, after the passage of almost half a century, Siddharth Shankar Ray was a well known barrister and the chief minister of West Bengal. H.R. Gokhale was the union law minister and a former judge of Bombay High Court. Devakant Barua was president of the Congress Party, and Rajni Patel was a leading barrister and the strong man of Bombay and the fundraiser of the Congress Party. So, Mr. Nariman's referring to my father's remarks to him got me speculating about what if Mr. Nariman had not resigned as additional Solicitor General in protest against Indira Gandhi's imposing the emergency. But what if Mr. Nariman had continued in office and provided Indira Gandhi the wise, objective, unbiased legal advice in the national interest? And Mrs. Indira Gandhi, she had a very high regard for Mr. Fali Nariman's abilities and integrity, and she most certainly would have listened to him and sought his advice. Whereas Siddhartha Shankar Ray, H.R. Gokhale, Devakant Barua, and Rajni Patel were leading lawyers, they were politicians first. And so their advice about imposing the emergency was primarily colored by their political interests rather than in the national interest. Whereas Mr. Fali Nariman would have been able to give Indira Gandhi sound constitutional advice. And Mr. Fali Nariman has often stated that Indira Gandhi imposed the emergency to save her prime ministership after Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha of the Allahabad High Court had declared her election invalid. However, both Indira Gandhi's principal secretary, Professor Prithvinath Dhar, and my father, HY Sharada Prasad, who was her information advisor, both of them believed that the confrontation between Jayaprakash Narayan, Moraji Desai, and Nanaji Deshmukh on one side and Indira Gandhi on the other side, that this confrontation was reaching a flash point. And my assessment is that it was Jayaprakash Narayan's tying up with Nanaji Deshmukh of the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which made Indira Gandhi first think of imposing a crackdown. And I have elaborated on this assessment of mine in numerous articles and in my YouTube videos. And she frequently remarked to her aides that the nation was in need of a shock treatment. After the assassination of her chief fundraiser and the railways minister, Lalit Narayan Mishra, on 2nd January 1975, Indira Gandhi remarked to her advisors that she would be next. And on 8th January 1975, Siddharth Shankar Ray, he wrote a handwritten letter to Indira Gandhi advising her to ban the RSS and the Anand Marg, arrest their cadres and other opposition leaders, and impose an emergency, for which Siddharth Shankar Ray advised her to prime President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed to be prepared. And in my opinion, the Allahabad High Court verdict of 12th June 1975 invalidating her election was the straw which broke the camel's back, but it was not the root cause. Because Siddharth Shankar Ray advised her to impose an emergency on 8th January 1975, 2 months before she was cross examined in the Court of Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha, and that was in March 1975. And I've written about this in numerous articles as well as in my YouTube videos. And in fact, Indira Gandhi consulted Mr. Fali Nariman about Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha's verdict. Her advocate on record in the Supreme Court was Mr. J.B. Dadachandji, and J.B. Dadachandji was a very close friend of my father. And J.B. Dadachandji in turn retained Nani Palkhiwala as counsel. And Mr. Fali Nariman had numerous meetings with the law minister, H.R. Gokhale, and with Indira Gandhi's principal secretary, Professor P.N. Dhar, about Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha's judgment. And Mr. Nariman, he wrote in his memoirs, Before Memory Fades, and I quote, "The judgment of Justice Sinha was brought to me by J.B. Dadachandji, who was the advocate on record for Indira Gandhi in the Supreme Court." And he goes on to say, in my view, the judgment was singularly weak in its reasoning. And I mentioned this to both Dhar and Gokhale. Indira Gandhi personally requested that I should vet the grounds of appeal as also the stay application, even after her own senior advocate, the distinguished Nani Palkhiwala, had settled them. I was flattered. I went through the papers and suggested a few changes. On 19th June, the verification paragraphs of the petition were also scrutinized. Filing of the petition of appeal was delayed for another day to select the most astrologically auspicious date. Unquote. So, this is what Mr. Fali Nariman wrote in his memoirs. And Nani Palkhiwala and J.B. Dadachandji appeared for Indira Gandhi before Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, and within hours of Indira Gandhi declaring the emergency, Mr. Fali Nariman resigned as the additional solicitor general, and Nani Palkhiwala returned her brief, refusing to continue to represent her in the Supreme Court. The principal reason why I am speculating about what if Mr. Nariman had not resigned but had continued to provide Indira Gandhi his wise counsel is that from 1973 onwards, both P. and Dhar and my father, they submitted their resignations to Indira Gandhi several times, but she refused to accept them, saying, "The nation needs your services." And P. and Dhar and my father were very unhappy with the dubious activities of Sanjay Gandhi and his coterie, as well as with widespread political corruption and misgovernance. The senior officers of Indira Gandhi's administration, P.N. Haksar, uh, G.P. Gopalaswamy Parthasarathi, N.K. Seshan, and my father had been brought into government personally by Jawaharlal Nehru, and they were absolutely aghast at how Nehru's own grandson and Nehru's own daughter was subverting his ideals. And P.N. Dhar and N.K. Seshan and my father, they sought the advice of P.N. Haksar and Gopalaswamy Parthasarathi. And voicing their dilemma, G. Parthasarathi, he had been a cricketer in England, and he quoted the question which his friend Headley Verity had posed during the Bodyline Ashes series of 1932. Should loyalty to the captain prevail over qualms of conscience? But P.N. Haksar was firm that they should not resign under any circumstances. P.N. Haksar emphasized, we must all stay within the system and fight further deterioration. If we are not there, there will be no one left to counter the influence of the people at her residence. And Haksar meant Sanjay Gandhi, R.K. Dhawan, and Muhammad Yunus, and their cronies Bansi Lal and Om Mehta. And P.N. Haksar added, we will all feel morally superior and assuage our consciences if we resign. But outside the system, we will count for nothing, and there will be no one left to stem the rot. And since N.K. Seshan was the only one of them who functioned out of Indira Gandhi's residential office at One Safdarjung Road rather than from South Block, so P.N. Haksar gave N.K. Seshan detailed instructions to stymie Sanjay Gandhi's nefarious plans from within. And N.K. Seshan, he had been the highly trusted personal secretary of Jawaharlal Nehru from 1944 onwards, and Nehru very fondly referred to Seshan as the son he never had. So GPG Parthasarathi, Gopalaswamy Parthasarathi, he concluded the views of Larwood, Bose, Bob Wyatt, and especially Verity himself in supporting Jardine's bodyline over the protests of Gubby Allen and Patodi showed that the interests of the team should prevail over qualms of conscience. And using his key position in Indira Gandhi's residence, N.K. Seshan managed to thwart some of the worst excesses of Sanjay Gandhi, R.K. Dhawan, Bansi Lal, and Om Mehta. And Sanjay Gandhi greatly harassed N.K. Seshan, the man who had dangled him on his knee. But P.N. Haksar exhorted N.K. Seshan to stay firm no matter how strong the provocation. and the eminent editor B.G. George Verghese. He has written about how P.N. Dhar and my father were successfully able to insulate the Prime Minister's Secretariat from Sanjay Gandhi. And so that got me thinking that it would have been quite likely that if Mr. Fali Nariman had stayed within the system, he would have been able to counterbalance the legal advice given by Siddhartha Shankar Ray, H.R. Gokhale, Devakant Barua, and Rajni Patel, the advice that they gave Indira Gandhi to impose the emergency. And in his memoirs, Before Memory Fades, Mr. Fali Nariman stated, and I quote, these prominent lawyers prevailed over a pliant precedent, unquote. And Mr. Fali Nariman added in his autobiography, and I quote, the precedent, after appending his signature to the warrant of dictatorial rule, took a sleeping pill. It would have been better for the country if he had taken the sleeping pill before signing the proclamation. This precipitate act of the head of state at the entreaties of prominent lawyers enabled the government to pick up and detain in the dark hours of the night all political heavyweights in the opposition, unquote. So, this is what Mr. Nariman said in his memoirs. However, my information is that Indira Gandhi and Siddhartha Shankar Ray had met President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed several times in the 3 days preceding the declaration of the emergency, and R.K. Dhawan too confirmed later that Indira Gandhi and S.S. Ray, Siddhartha Shankar Ray, had met the president numerous times after 21st June 1975, and R.K. Dhawan's brother K.L. Dhawan was the private secretary to the president Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed. And I've learned that President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed, he wrote a note in his private journal about his signing of the emergency proclamation. However, his son, Justice Badar Durez Ahmed, who had worked as an advocate in Siddharth Shankar Ray's chambers. So Justice Badar Durez Ahmed destroyed this journal written by the president because of its extreme sensitivity. And I've also learned that during the emergency, President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed, he privately expressed his disquiet about the many of Sanjay Gandhi's actions to Indira Gandhi, and that led to strained relations between the president and the prime minister. And President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed's image has been unfairly tarnished because of Abu Abraham's cartoon in the Indian Express newspaper depicting him as signing the ordinance in his bathtub. And to buttress my view that Mr. Nariman could have been the legal analog to N.K. Sessions' role in stymieing Sanjay Gandhi from within, I would like to elaborate on the possible roles of two of Indira Gandhi's lawyers in ending the emergency. Madan Gajadhar, and Madan Gajadhar was a Queen's Counsel. He was also advising the Australian government on its constitutional relations with Great Britain, as well as the second lawyer was Indira Gandhi's longtime lawyer, J.B. Dadachandji. And both of them were very close friends of my father. And after Nani Palkhiwala refused to continue to represent Indira Gandhi, her lawyers in the Supreme Court were Ashok K. Sen, Jagannath M. Kaushal, D.P. Singh, J.B. Dada Chandji, R.H. Debar, Madan Gajadhar, U.C. Agarwal, Yogeshwar Prasad, H.K.L. Bhagat, Sudhir Bera, K.P. Bandhari, and Anjali K. Verma. And the government was represented by Niren Day, who was the Attorney General, Lal Narayan Sinha, who was the Solicitor General, and V.A. Syed Muhammad, A.N. Sachde, P.P. Rao, Sumitra Chakravarti, and A.P. Nair. And Mr. Fali Nariman had written an article in the Indian Express newspaper speculating about why Indira Gandhi ended the emergency and called for elections. And he termed this, quote, a tantalizing mystery, unquote, and also, quote, the unsolved, intractable problem of our times, unquote. And I responded to Mr. Nariman's article in the Indian Express, proposing several hypotheses about why Indira Gandhi ended the emergency. And one of my hypotheses was the following, and that was that in 1975 itself, Abdur Rahim Antole of Maharashtra, Rajni Patel, and Vasant Sathe, with input from NKP Salve, had formulated a proposal to convert India into a presidential form of government. And Siddharth Shankar Ray, H.R. Gokhale, and Devakant Barua thought that this was a good idea, and they further built on their proposal. And these three advised that it would first be necessary to convert the present parliament into a constituent assembly and also get two-thirds of the state assemblies to pass acts supporting this conversion to a presidential system. And Bansi Lal got the state assemblies of Haryana, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, and Bihar to support this proposal for a new constitution. A 13-member constitution bench of the Supreme Court had been set up for the purpose of overturning its earlier judgment in the Keshavanand Bharati case that Parliament could not amend the basic structure of the constitution. And in early November 1976, Indira Gandhi criticized the Keshavanand Bharati judgment in Parliament, and many of Sanjay Gandhi's acolytes. They wanted that the Supreme Court and High Courts should not have any rights to review acts passed by Parliament and by the state legislatures. Then Bansi Lal went to the extent of proclaiming that Indira Gandhi should be made president for life and elections be done away with. And Sanjay Gandhi made a speech which was widely reported. Future generations will judge us not by the number of elections we held, but by the economic progress we made. And in my opinion, I think this is when Indira Gandhi finally came to the realization that things were going too far. And I discussed this with Inder Malhotra, the leading political commentator and a biographer of Indira Gandhi. And Inder Malhotra agreed with this conjecture of mine. And the American constitutional expert Granville Seward Austin, he was a very close friend of my father, as well as of Mr. Fali Nariman. And Mr. Fali Nariman refers to Granville Austin frequently in his memoirs. So Granville Austin too concurred, and Granville Austin added that arguments were being made that since the Indian president would be directly elected by the people, she or he should enjoy more authority and powers than even the American and French presidents. And a senior government official, he had managed to get a copy of the proposals uh, for converting India into a presidential form of government from the stenographers, the stenotypists of Devkant Barua, and he passes on to Granville Austin in total secrecy. And then Indira Gandhi began to remark that foreign politicians were already comparing Sanjay and her to Baby Doc and Papa Doc de Villiers of Haiti, and nicknaming her as Mama Doc. So, taking very great care not to let anyone in her Congress party know, um, Indira Gandhi had extensive discussions, private one on one discussions with the eminent Commonwealth constitutional lawyer Madan Gajadhar. Madan Gajadhar was a Queen's counsel, and he was at that time advising the Australian government on its constitutional relations with Great Britain. And she also had long discussions with a long term lawyer, J.B. Dadachandji, and she also occasionally consulted D.P. Singh, who was a leading lawyer and an MP, and D.P. Singh was very close to P.N. Haksar. So Madan Gajadhar, J.B. Dadachandji, and D.P. Singh were all close friends of my father and of P.N. Haksar. And I vaguely recall Madan Gajadhar as well as J.B. Dadachandji coming to our house and telling my father that they had sounded out Lord Denning and Lord Hailsham and had received their advice that India would be at risk of being expelled from the Commonwealth if it were to become a presidential dictatorship. And since Mr. Nariman knew Lord Denning very well, perhaps he could provide more information about this hypothesis of mine, or political scientists could do further research on this hypothesis of mine about the role played by Madan Gajadhar and J.B. Tadachandji, that converting India to presidential form of government would possibly lead to sanctions and reprimands from the Commonwealth. And the 13-member constitution bench of the Supreme Court was dissolved. Further, about 150 Congress MPs and several hundred MLAs had indicated their opposition to the 42nd Amendment. And so this also shows that public opinion was probably turning against the emergency, because if Congress MPs indicated their opposition to the 42nd Amendment, then it shows that dissatisfaction was brewing at the ground level. And perhaps this could be the reason why my father told Mr. Fali Nariman that if Indira Gandhi had a deeper understanding of constitutional history and constitutional laws, then she would not have imposed the emergency in the first place at all. She could have found much milder ways of dealing with the threats posed by the RSS and the Anand Marg and the challenges thrown down by Jaiprakash Narayan, Moraji Desai, and Nanaji Deshmukh. But she got brainwashed by Siddharth Shankar Ray, who was her childhood friend. And my father, HY Sharada Prasad, he maintained that the emergency was a desperate panic overreaction by Indira Gandhi after JP, Moraji, and Nanaji, as well as Jagjeevan Ram, had pushed her into a corner without giving her a face saving escape route. And in her desperate panic, she used 100 times more force than was necessary, and as was her characteristic habit, according to my father. And she probably intended the emergency to be a short term measure, the shock treatment that she had repeatedly declared that the nation was in need of such a shock treatment. And as I have written in my articles and stated in my YouTube videos, she intended to announce the relaxation of most of the emergency measures in her Independence Day speech on 15th August 1975. But the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, on India's Independence Day compelled her to continue the emergency. And then Sanjay Gandhi consolidated his power, and numerous excesses occurred. And P.N. Dhar had also stated that Indira Gandhi was deeply uncomfortable with the emergency and, quote, sought to get out of it somehow, anyhow, unquote. And in his interview with Barkha Dutt, Mr. Fali Nariman spoke about Justice V.M. Tarkunde, and Justice Vittal Mahadev Tarkunde was a very close associate of Loknayak Jayaprakash Narayan. And Mr. Nariman has also written in his memoirs about Kuldeep Nayar's habeas corpus case and about Justice Seshayengar Rangarajan of the Delhi High Court, whom he rated as one of the finest judges ever. And I would like to elaborate on these. Um, my maternal uncle K.S. Radhakrishna, who he was head of the Gandhi Peace Foundation, and he was the closest aide of Loknayak Jayaprakash Narayan. And JP was arrested from Radhakrishna's residence on the night of 25th, 26th June 1975. And even though there was a warrant for his arrest to my maternal uncle, he managed to slip away from under the very eyes of the police, who were concentrating on putting JP into his car. And for several months, my uncle traveled all over the country coordinating resistance with several Gandhian Sarvodaya workers. However, after several elderly relatives of ours and even innocent neighbors were harassed to reveal his location, my maternal uncle Radhakrishna surrendered to the police to spare other relatives and friends from further harassment. But we family members did not know where he had been taken. So K.S. Radhakrishna's close associate on JP's advisory team was retired Justice V.M. Tarkunde. And Justice Tarkunde, he filed habeas corpus pleas in the Delhi High Court on behalf of Bhim Sen Sachar. Bhim Sen Sachar was the former Chief Minister of Punjab, and Bhim Sen Sachar's son-in-law Kuldeep Nayar, the noted journalist of Indian Express, who was arrested and lodged in Tihar jail, and on behalf of my maternal uncle K.S. Radhakrishna. And by a very lucky twist of fate, these habeas corpus pleas in the Delhi High Court came up for hearing before Justice Seshayengar Rangarajan, and he was a relative, a distant relative. He was from the same extended family as my mother. Or maybe it was not a coincidence. It is quite possible that the Chief Justice of Delhi High Court, Justice T.V.R. Tatachari, and Justice T.V.R. Tatachari was another distant relative of my mother's, K.S. Radhakrishna, my maternal uncle, uh, Justice Seshayengar Rangarajan, Justice T.V.R. Tatachari. We all came from the same extended family, a small subset of Iyengars, and it's quite possible that Chief Justice T.V.R. Tatachari might have assigned these habeas corpus pleas to Justice Seshayengar Rangarajan, and my maternal uncle K.S. Radhakrishna was produced in handcuffs in the court of Justice Rangarajan, and that is how we family members came to know that he had been jailed in Tihar jail. And Justice Rangarajan did not recuse himself from the habeas corpus pleas of his relative, probably realizing that liberty, the very liberty, was at stake. And Justice Rangarajan, he ordered that all prisoners in Tihar jail should be given weekly medical examinations and permitted visits from family members once a week. And our relative, Justice Seshayengar Rangarajan, he was very apprehensive that his verdicts about Kuldeep Nayar and Bhim Sen Sachar would be interfered with by Sanjay Gandhi and his cabal. So Justice Rangarajan, he woke up at 3 a.m. every day and he himself typed out the verdict on his manual typewriter at his residence. And at a family wedding, Chief Justice TVR Tatachari, he slipped a sealed envelope to my mother, whispering to her, "If anything happens to Ranga, then open this." So after Justice Seshayengar Rangarajan reserved his judgment on 10th September 1975, but before he delivered it, the government released Kuldeep Nair, the journalist of the Indian Express, and the government's counsel argued that since Kuldeep Nair had been released, there was no need for the verdict to be delivered. And a very livid Justice Rangarajan not only insisted on reading out the verdict, but he also added several paragraphs severely castigating the government. And a very furious Indira Gandhi immediately transferred Justice Rangarajan to the Guwahati High Court, and his fellow judge, Justice Rajendranath Agarwal, was demoted to the Delhi District Courts, and Chief Justice TVR Tatachari and Justice TPS Chawla. They tried very hard to protect Justice Agarwal, but they were unsuccessful when they faced Indira Gandhi's wrath. And even Law Minister H.R. Gokhale told Indira Gandhi that demoting Justice R.N. Agarwal was taking things too far, but a whispering campaign was set in motion that Justice R.N. Agarwal was a member of the RSS. And the Chief Justice of India, A.N. Ray, and Indira Gandhi had elevated A.N. Ray to the Chief Justice, superseding three justices, Shalat, Hegde, and Grover. So Justice A.N. Ray he immediately acquiesced to Indira Gandhi's verbal wishes, issuing the transfer and demotion orders for Justice Rangarajan and Justice Agarwal on the spot. And Mr. Fali Nariman, he gave wide publicity to Justice Rangarajan's verdict among the international legal community and had won praise from Lord Denning. And a very angry Indira Gandhi told my father, "You can tell Tata Chari that he will never make it to the Supreme Court." And the Janata Party government, they brought back Justice Seshayengar Rangarajan back to Delhi in 1978, but he could not make it to the Supreme Court. However, he became the head of the MRTP, the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Commission. And Mr. Nariman has written in his memoirs, and I quote, "I was dismayed at Rangarajan's transfer and even more dismayed that he did not make it later to the Supreme Court." Unquote. And Justice TVR Tatachari did not make it to the Supreme Court either, despite being Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court for 5 years. Fortunately, Justice Rajendranath Agarwal was promoted back to the Delhi High Court and he later became its Chief Justice. Well, to digress a little, a very interesting anecdote was narrated by Nani Palkhiwala to my mother, and Nani Palkhiwala and my mother knew each other well from the late 1940s when she worked as an aide to the eminent barrister Purushottam Trikamdas. So, what Nani Palkhiwala narrated was that during one of the hearings in the Supreme Court, Justice Mirza Hamidullah Beg asked the Solicitor General Lal Narayan Sinha if he knew of any other instance where the executive branch of government had arrogated to itself the powers of the judicial and the legislative branches. And after thinking for a while, Ellen Sinha replied, "The court of Jahangir." And Justice M.H. Beg, he retorted that Indira Gandhi did not have the sense of justice and fair play of Jahangir, And he asked Ellen Sinha if she wants to regress the nation back to the 17th century. And the Prime Minister's house and the INB Minister Vidyacharan Shukla, the Information and Broadcasting Minister, they exerted great pressure on newspapers to not carry the above exchange. But very ironically, Justice Mirza Hamidullah Beg soon delivered highly favorable judgments in the ADM Jabalpur case and in Indira Gandhi's election appeal. And he was rewarded by me being promoted to Chief Justice, superseding Justice H.R. Khanna. And in his interview with Barkha Dutt, Mr. Nariman spoke about the bandwagon judges. And I think it's very unfortunate that someone who's as erudite and scholarly and as polished as Justice M.H. Beg could demean himself to write about the maternal care that the state had bestowed on political detainees. And again, in his interview with Barkha Dutt, Mr. Nariman spoke at length about judicial appointments, and in my assessment, the root cause of Indira Gandhi's uncomfortable relationship with the judiciary began when the sitting Chief Justice of India, Koka Subbarao, he resigned in April 1967, 3 months before he was due to retire. He resigned as a sitting Chief Justice to become the opposition's candidate for the President of India. And Koka Subbarao, even though he lost the presidential elections to Zakir Hussain, but he still got 44% of the votes of the Electoral College. And Indira Gandhi was absolutely furious with Chief Justice Koka Subbarao, and she resolved to appoint judges who shared her views on economic and social issues. And she wanted to bring about radical social changes. And she viewed the judiciary as being orthodox and conservative because the judiciary, with its emphasis on precedents, was backward looking rather than forward looking. And therefore, she viewed the judiciary as a barrier to her initiatives about the social and political changes she wanted to bring about. And Surendra Mohan Kumar Mangalam and Parmeshwar Narayan Haksar, they sought to appoint judges who were of their London School of Economics mindset, Fabian socialists, people who thought like Nehru did. And in fact, Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer was one of their key appointments. Um, so again, Indira Gandhi, she was prejudiced against T.V.R. Tatachari, who's the Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court and a relative on my mother's side, because she thought that Tatachari was too orthodox and too conservative. And in this interview with Barkha Dutt, Mr. Nariman described about how Jawaharlal Nehru did not want Meherchand Mahajan to become Chief Justice, and Meherchand Mahajan had been the Premier of Kashmir. And N.K. Seshan, he has stated about how determined Indira Gandhi was that Justice K.S. Hegde, Kaudor Sadananda Hegde, that he should not become Chief Justice of India under any circumstances. And K.S. Hegde, he had been a Congress party member of the Rajya Sabha in the 1950s when he resigned as he was appointed as a judge of the Mysuru High Court. And again, in his interview with Barkha Dutt, Mr. Nariman mentioned appointments to the Supreme Court directly from the bar. And indeed, his own son, Rohinton Fali Nariman, was appointed directly from the bar to the Supreme Court. And Rohinton Nariman was earlier the Solicitor General. And others who were appointed from the bar to the Supreme Court were Chief Justice S.M. Sikri, Justice Subhamal Chandra Roy, Justice Kuldeep Singh, Justice Santosh Hegde, and Justice Santosh Hegde is the son of Justice Kaudur Sadananda Hegde, who was superseded for the Chief Justiceship, Justice Juju Lalit, Justice Lavu Nageshwara Rao, and Justice Indu Malhotra. And in this context, I would like to mention that in Raj Narayan's election case against Indira Gandhi when Shanti Bhushan was representing Raj Narayan in the Court of Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha, both H.R. Gokhale and Siddharth Shankar Ray, they proposed that Shanti Bhushan could be lured away from the case by making him a Supreme Court judge. But P.N. Haksar thundered that this would be most improper. Well, I think I should stop now. This video is already long enough. So please subscribe to my channels on YouTube and Instagram. And please connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook pages, Instagram threads, and Twitter. On my YouTube channel, I will be uploading several more videos about politics, the economy, business and industry, and about technology and technology policies. So please subscribe to my YouTube and Instagram channels, and also please connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook pages, Twitter, and Instagram threads. This is Ravi Visvesvaraya Sharada Prasad saying goodbye. Have a great day. Goodbye.